In this video, we're going to look at the last thing that you need to do before you can actually install WordPress, which is edit the WP config file. Now, what we're going to do here is open up a PHP file and make some edits. This is not programming. This is going to be very simple stuff. Do not be afraid. So the first thing that we're going to do with this file, as you can see, WordPress comes with wp-config sample.php. I'm going to change that to just wp-config. WordPress will not read the sample file. Renaming it means that this is now a file that WordPress will read when you load it in a web browser. So let's open it up. Okay, here it is. Got a giant comment here explaining what this file is. This is the stuff that we need to start editing right here, the database settings. So WordPress will know where the database is and how to connect to it. So my sample welcome letter here has the details that I want. Yours from your hosting company will have equivalent details. So we're going to copy out the ones that are important here. So we'll start with the database name, user database, and drop that in here where it says database name here. Likewise, we're going to do this with the user, password, and host. So here's the user. Copy that and paste it in. The password, paste it in. And localhost is just what my welcome letter says. Yours may be different. If it is, you can change that here. Otherwise, you can just leave that. These two settings relate to the character set used when connecting to and storing data in the database. Generally speaking, you can leave these in their defaults. We have a few more things to edit, so let's move down the file a bit. These are the, as it says, authentication unique keys and salts. It's important that you fill in, as it says, unique phrases in each of these places because these are used by WordPress to make your data stored in the database more encrypted and more secure. It's important that they are basically random, and really it's fine if they're garbage. So WordPress provides you this link right here. If you take a look at it, which is what we're going to do now, I'm going to command click this, which will open the link for me in my editor. This is exactly how this stuff can be filled in. As you can see, it's basically random stuff. Every WordPress installation should have different garbage here. So every time this page is loaded, you get a different set of garbage. I'll reload this so you can see that in action. You can see this stuff changes. Every WordPress installation should generate its keys in different ways, so it's important that this stuff changes. We will take this version and copy it, switch back to the editor, and just select all this stuff and paste it. There. Now I've got a nice collection of random stuff that will be used by WordPress to generate its keys. We'll move down. This is the WordPress table prefix, which is the first part of the name of every table in your database. It is considered a good idea to change this from its default value. So we'll change that to CMS, and the reason we do this is that if WordPress happens to have an exploit that lets somebody execute database queries from your WordPress installation, if they know that every table starts with WP, they will not have to guess what those tables are called, and they can run all kinds of weird queries and mess with your website. If you change this to something else, potentially the more random the better, then it's going to be a lot more difficult for somebody to run database queries from an arbitrary place. This is something that will not happen very often. WordPress is good about keeping on top of this stuff, especially if you keep on top of WordPress security updates. But it's a nice thing to do. It's called security by obscurity. It is not the only thing you want to do, but because it's relatively easy to change, it's a good idea to do that. This WP lang is good if you want to install WordPress in a language other than English. In this course, we're only going to cover English, so we'll leave this just as it is. And that's all we need to change here. This debug constant is used for fixing issues with WordPress. If you switch it to true, you'll have all kinds of notices and messages when you run WordPress, so it's good to leave it in its default value. We are almost done here. There is one more thing that I like to add, and I will do that up here. I'm going to copy this and paste it up here. I'm going to change this to revision backups. And what I'm going to do here is change this dbuser to another constant that we can find on WordPress.org. On this revision management page, here's the link. Scroll down a little bit and you can see this, WP post revisions, which I will copy and bring over. This setting controls how many revisions of every single post WordPress will track for you. Every time you make an edit to a piece of content, WordPress remembers it. If you leave this in its default value, which is to say if you don't add it to your file with a custom value, WordPress will basically store every revision of every piece of content, and that can make your database blow up in size. So what I like to do is change this to something like 10 or 20. And that way, for any given piece of content, WordPress will store the last 10 revisions, not the last infinity revisions. And that helps keep your database a little bit smaller, which I like. It's a nice trade-off. So we can now save this file, and we have made all the edits we need to make just to get started. So now you have edited your WordPress config file. Congratulations, and you can move on to installing WordPress.